So, so you want to do research for various things. So let us skip this, but it is research. Research about research has been described everywhere. Now you want to frame a research question. You have some thought in the mind, you want to frame the research question. So what factors you take into consideration? Because the way you frame the research question decides what type of study design is your study going to be. The study design means what type of study you are going to conduct. There are various designs, study design. Is somebody going to talk about study design also? No. Okay. So whether okay. So it depends on what type of question you ask will decide what type of study you are going to conduct. You cannot ask a question, I'll take everyone to Mars, take them to Mars and measure the intraocular pressure and bring them down to Earth and then measure the intraocular pressure and see if the travel has made any difference to intraocular pressure. It's a meaningless research question. It may be valid in some other time, but now it is meaningless. So your research question should be plausible. You should be able to do it in a specific period of time. Okay, following cataract operation, how many patients develop capsular opacity with this type of lens as opposed to this type of lens? Square edge lens with non-square edge lens, how many of them develop? When you develop, do uncomplicated cataract. See, all the terms come into your research. If it is a complicated cataract extraction, the opacity will be much faster, so you cannot compare it. So you have to decide what type of study you do. All the factors should be taken into consideration because your research question makes or decides the design of the study. Okay? So what are the prerequisites for conducting your research? First of all, you need to know knowledge. You need to have knowledge. If you don't know anything, then anything is research. Which has already been researched, is still a research because you don't know anything, so you will research again and again. It is like reinventing zero or the reinventing wheel. So you must have knowledge, you identify the gap, and having identified the gap, what you are going to do to fill that gap which is there in the knowledge. You understand? So that's how these points are important, because type of research question decides the design of your study. So therefore framing of your research question is very, very important. You have to decide clearly about the question because this dictates the research time, the research money and the manpower. If you do not, for example, a simple example I'll give you. You want to decide what percentage of the patients with diabetic macular edema following uncomplicated cataract extraction develop diabetic macular edema. The previous study show it is 20%. So you want to decide, is it really correct in Indians? Okay, you calculate first sample size. Because sample size now you have to calculate based on 20% is the previous study's results. That is important for you in your sample calculation. Therefore, you need to know the knowledge. Then after you have calculated, then you should decide how many cases I need. Once you have done that, you need to do on patients before cataract operation and after cataract operation at 1 month, at 3 weeks, etc. you decide. So you get a number of figures. That means so many OCTs you have to do before you can tell anything. And even in OCT, if 270 is the normal figure and if you keep 280 as significant, then your sample size will be different. If you keep 285 as the difference, which is acceptable, then sample size will be larger. You understand? So therefore, you need to know what you are looking for and the degree that you consider as positive for your study. Okay, there's no, if 270 is normal, 271 cannot be abnormal. So there has to be a leeway. You can keep it as abnormal, but then you will have 1,000 cataracts you have to do, 3,000 OCTs you have to do, you don't have money. Okay, so therefore, these are all things which can tell you that it's important to frame your research question properly because it decides the study design, it decides the sample size, it decides the money you spend, and it decides the time it takes. All these factors are decided by how you frame a research question. You cannot just offhand think, oh, I have seen this, I must do this research. and decide the frame the question. It's not possible. You need to understand the whole of it and then calculate what all you need, what time do I have, how much of money do I have, and then only you frame a proper research question. Because if you frame a proper research question, then only you get proper answer. That is, otherwise it is useless. Simple prickly eyes. Oh, how many patients following cataract extraction have prickly eyes? You decide. Oh, I think quite a bit. But wait, hang on a minute. What is it prickly eye due to? Is it due to suture? No, I don't put any suture. Okay, what is it due to? Then you have to do so many tests to decide what is it due to. You understand? So your research question has to be properly thought of. To think properly about research question, you need to know. First of all, knowing is more important. Then only we can find the gap. If you don't know, everything is a gap. I don't know what has been described, so the whole literature is zero. So I want to start from zero because nobody knows anything in this subject. You understand? So that I think I'll stop at that to give others some time. Thank you very much for listening to me.